Before going to the principle of heat treatment, one para is substitution of aircraft metals. In selecting substitute metals for the repair and maintenance of aircraft, it is very important to check the appropriate structural repair manual. Aircraft manufacturers design structural members to meet a specific load requirement for a particularly aircraft. The method of repairing these members, apparently similar in construction, will thus vary with different aircraft. For requirements must be kept in mind when selecting substitute metals. The first and most important of this is maintaining the original strength of the structure. The other three are: number one is maintaining contour or aerodynamic smoothness. Number two is maintaining original weight if possible or keeping added weight to a minimum. And number three, maintaining the original corrosion resistant properties of the metal. Is principle of heat treatment. Heat treatment is a series of operations involving the heating and cooling of metals in the solid state. Its purpose is to change a mechanical property or combination of mechanical properties so that the metal will be more useful, serviceable and safe for a definite purpose. By heat treating, a metal can be made harder, stronger and more resistant to impact. Heat treating can also make a metal softer and more ductile. No one heat treating operation can produce all of these characteristics. In fact, some properties are often improved at the expense of others. In being hardened, for example, a metal may become brittle. The various heat treating processes are similar in that they all involve the heating and cooling of metals. They differ, however, in the temperature to which the metal is heated, the rate at which it is cooled, and of course in the final result. The most common forms of heat treatment for ferrous metals are hardening, tempering, normalizing, annealing and case hardening. Most non-ferrous metals can be annealed and many of them can be hardened by heat treatment. However, there is only one non-ferrous metal, titanium, that can be case hardened and none can be tempered or normalized. Now, internal structure of metals. The results obtained by heat treatment depend to a great extent on the structure of the metal and on the manner in which the structure changes when the metal is heated and cooled. A pure metal cannot be hardened by heat treatment because there is little change in its structure when heated. On the other hand, most alloys respond to heat treatment since their structure change with heating and cooling. As alloy may be in the form of a solid solution, a mechanical mixture, or a combination of a solid solution and a mechanical mixture. When an alloy is in the form of a solid solution, the elements and compounds which forms the alloy are absorbed one into the other in much the same way that salt is dissolved in a glass of water, and the constituents cannot be identified even under a microscope. When two or more elements or compounds are mixed but can be identified by microscope examinations, a mechanical mixture is formed. A mechanical mixture can be compared to the mixture of sand and gravel in concrete. The sand and gravel are both visible, just as the sand and gravel are held together and kept in place by the matrix of cement. The other constituents of an alloy are embedded in the matrix formed by the base metal. An alloy in the form of a mechanical mixture at ordinary temperatures may change to a solid solution when heated. When cooled, back to normal temperature, the alloy may return to its original structure. On the other hand, it may remain a solid solution or form a combination of a solid solution and mechanical mixture. An alloy which consists of a combination of solid solution and mechanical mixture at normal temperature may change to a solid solution when heated. When cooled, the alloy may remain a solid solution, returns to its original structure, or form a complex solution. Now, heat treating equipment. Successful heat treating requires close control over all factors affecting the heating and cooling of metals. Such control is possible only when the proper equilibrium is available and the equipment is selected to fit the particular job. Thus, the furnace must be of the proper size and type and must be so controlled that temperatures are kept within the limits prescribed for each operation. Even the atmosphere within the furnace affects the condition of the part being heat treated. Further, the quenching equipment and the quenching medium must be selected to fit the metal and the heat treating operation. Finally, there must be equipment for handling parts and materials, the cleaning metals, and for strengthening parts. Furnaces and salt baths. There are many different types and sizes of furnaces used in heat treatment. As a general rule, furnaces are designed to operate in certain specific temperature ranges, and attempted use in other ranges frequently result in work of inferior quality. In addition, using a furnace beyond its rated maximum temperature shortens its life and may necessitate costly and time-consuming repairs. Fuel-fixed furnaces (gas or oil) require air for proper combustion, and an air compressor or blower is therefore necessary. These furnaces are usually of the muffler type. That is, the combustion of the fuel takes place outside of and around the chamber in which the work is placed. If an open muffler is used, the furnace should be designed so as to prevent the direct impingement of flame on the work. In furnace heated by electricity, the heating elements are generally in the form of wire or ribbon. Good design requires incorporation of additional heating elements at location where maximum heat loss may be expected. Such furnace commonly operate up to a maximum temperature of about 2000 degree Fahrenheit. Furnace operating at temperatures up to about 2500 degree Fahrenheit usually employ resistor bars of sintered carbides. Temperature measurement and control. Temperature in the heat treating furnace is measured by a thermoelectric instrument known as a pyrometer. The instrument measures the electrical effects of a thermocouple and hence the temperature of the metal being treated. A complete pyrometer consists of three parts: a thermocouple, then extension lead, and meter. Furnace intended primarily for tempering may be heated by gas or electricity and are frequently equipped with a fan for circulating the hot air. Salt baths are available for operating at either tempering or hardening temperatures. Depending on the composition of the salt bath, heating can be conducted at temperatures as low as 325 degree Fahrenheit to as high as 2450 degree Fahrenheit. Lead baths can be used in the temperature range of 650 degree Fahrenheit to 1700 degree Fahrenheit. The rate of heating in lead or salt bath is much faster in furnace. Heat treating furnace differs in size, shape, capacity, constructions, operation and control. They may be circular or rectangular and may rest on pedestal or directly on the floor. There are also pit type furnaces which are below the surface of the floor. When metal is to be heated in a bath of molten salt or lead, the furnace must contain a pot or crucible for the molten bath. The size and capacity of a heat treating furnace depends on the intended use. A furnace must be capable of heating rapidly and uniformly regardless of the desired maximum temperature or the mass of the charge. An oven type furnace should have a working space (hearth) about twice as long as 3 times as wide as any part that will be heated in the furnace. Accurate temperatures measurement is essential to good heat treating. The usual method is by means of thermocouples. The most common base metal couples are copper Constantine (up to about 700 degree Fahrenheit), iron Constantine up to about 1400 degree Fahrenheit, it is also in bracket, and chromel aluminum, it is also in bracket, up to about 2200 degree Fahrenheit. The most common noble metal couples in bracket which can be used up to about 2800 degree Fahrenheit are platinum coupled with either the alloy 87% platinum dash 13% rhodium or the alloy 90% platinum 10% rhodium. The temperature quoted are for continuous operation. The life of thermocouples is affected by the maximum temperature in bracket which may be frequently exceed those given above, and by the furnace atmosphere. Iron Constantine is more suited for use in reducing, and chromel aluminum is oxidizing atmospheres. Thermocouples are usually encased in metallic or ceramic tubes closed at the hot end to protect them from the furnace gases. A necessary attachment is an instrument such as a millivoltmeter or potentiometer for measuring the electric motive force generated by the thermocouple. In the interest of accurate control, the hot junction of the thermocouple should be placed as close to the work as possible. The use of an automatic controller is valuable in controlling the temperature at the desired value. Pyrometers may have meters either of the indicating type or recording type. Indicating pyrometers give direct reading of the furnace temperature. The recording type produces a permanent record of the temperature range throughout the heating operation. By means of an ink stylus attached to an arm which traces a line on a sheet of calibrated paper or temperature chart. Pyrometer installations on all modern furnaces provide automatic regulation of the temperature at any desired setting. Instruments of these types are called controlling potentiometer pyrometers. They include a current regulator and an operating mechanism such as a relay. Heating. The object is to transform perlite (a mechanical mixture of iron carbide and that exists in a finely mixed condition) to austenite as the steel is heated to the critical range. Since the transition takes time, a relatively slow rate of heating must be used. Ordinarily, The cold steel is inserted when the temperature in the furnace is from 300 degree Fahrenheit to 500 degree Fahrenheit below the hardening temperature. In this way, too rapid heating through the critical range is prevented. If temperature measuring equipment is not available, it becomes necessary to estimate temperatures by some other means. An inexpensive yet fairly accurate method involves the use of commercial crayons, pellets, or paints that melt at various temperatures within the range of 125 degree Fahrenheit to 1600 degree Fahrenheit. The least accurate method of temperature estimation is by observation of the color of the hot hearth of the furnace or of the work. The heat colors observed are affected by many factors such as the condition of artificial or natural light, the character of the scale on the work, etc. Steel begins to appear dull red at about 1000 degree Fahrenheit, and as the temperature increases, the color changes gradually through various shades of red to orange, to yellow, and finally to white. A rough approximation of the correspondence between color and temperature is indicated in the given figure. It is also possible to secure some idea of the temperature of a piece of carbon or low alloy steel in the low temperature range used for tempering from the color of the thin oxide film that forms on the clean surface of the steel when heated in this range. The approximate temperature color relationship for a time of at temperature of about 1/2 is indicated on the lower portion of the scale as given in the figure. Now, protective atmospheres. It is often necessary or desirable to protect steel or cast iron from surface oxidation, in bracket scaling, and loss of carbon from the surface layers, in bracket decarbonization. Commercial furnaces therefore are generally equipped with some means of atmosphere control. The usually is in the form of a burner for burning controlled amount of gas and air and directing the products of combustion into the furnace muffle. Water vapor, a product of the combustion, is detrimental, and many furnaces are equipped with a means for eliminating it. For furnaces not equipped with atmosphere control, a variety of external atmosphere generators are available. The gas so generated is piped into the furnace, and one generator may supply several furnaces. If no method of atmosphere control is available, some degrees of protection may be secured by covering the work with cast iron borings or chips. Since the work in salt or lead baths is surrounded by the liquid heating medium, the problem of preventing scaling or decarbonization is simplified. Vacuum furnaces also are used for annealing steels, especially when a bright non-oxidized surface is a prime consideration. Now, soaking. The temperature of the furnace must be held constant during the soaking period, since it is during this period that rearrangement of the internal structure of the steel takes place. Soaking Temperature for various type of steel are specified in ranges varying as much as 100 degree Fahrenheit. For this, I am giving you a figure. Small parts are soaked in the lower part of the specified range, and heavy parts are in the upper parts of the specified range. The length of the soaking period depends upon the type of steel and the size of the part. Naturally, heavier parts require longer soaking to ensure equal heating throughout. As a general rule, a soaking period of 30 minutes to 1 hour is sufficient for the average heating operation. Cooling. The rate of cooling through the critical range determines the form that the sheet metal will retain. Various rates of cooling are used to produce the desired results. Steel air is a slow cooling medium but is much faster than furnace cooling. Liquid are the fastest cooling media and are therefore used for hardening steel. There are three commonly used quenching liquids: brine, water and oil. Brine is the most severe medium, water is next, and the oil is the least severe. Generally, an oil quench is used for an alloy steel and brine or water for carbon steels. Quenching media. Quenching media solution act only through their ability to cool the steel. They have no beneficial chemical action on the quenched steel and it themselves impart no unusual properties. Most requirements for quenching media are met satisfactorily by water or aqueous solutions of inorganic salts such as table salt or caustic soda, or by some type of oil. The rate of cooling is relatively rapid during quenching in brine, somewhat less rapid in water and slow in oil. Brine usually is made up of a 5 to 10% solution of salt (sodium chloride) in water. In addition to the greater cooling speed, brine has the ability to throw the scale from steel during quenching. The cooling ability of both water and brine, particularly water, is considered affected by the temperature. Both should be kept cold well below 60 degree Fahrenheit. If the volume of steel being quenched tends to raise the temperature of the bath appreciably, the quenching bath should be cooled by adding ice or by some means of refrigeration. There are many specially prepared quenching oils on the market. Their cooling rates do not vary widely. A straight mineral oil with a Seabolt viscosity of about 100 to 100 degree Fahrenheit is generally used. Unlike brine and water, the oils have the greatest cooling velocity at a slightly elevated temperature, about 100 to 140 degree Fahrenheit, because of their decreased viscosity at this temperature. When steel is quenched, the liquid is immediate contact with the hot surface vaporizes. This vapor reduces the rate of heat abstraction markedly. Vigorous agitation of the steel or the use of a pressure spray quench is necessary to dislodge these vapor films and thus permit the desired rate of cooling. The tendency of steel to warp and crack during the quenching process is difficult to overcome because certain parts of the article cool more rapidly than others. The following recommendation will greatly reduce the warping tendency. Number 1. A part should never be thrown into the quenching bath by permitting it to lie on the bottom of the bath. It is apt to cool faster on the top side than on the bottom side, thus causing it to warp or crack. Number 2, the part should be agitated slightly to destroy the coating of vapor, which might prevent it from cooling rapidly. This allows the bath to convey its heat to the atmosphere. Number 3, irregular shaped parts should be immersed in such a way that the heavy end enters the bath first. Now, quenching equipment. The quenching tank should be of the proper size to handle the material being quenched. Circulating pumps and coolers may be used to maintain approximately constant temperatures when a large amount of quenching is to be done. To avoid building up of a high concentration of salt in the quenching tank, provision must be made to add fresh water to the quench tank used for molten salt baths. Tank's location in reference to the heat treating furnace is very important. The tank should be situated to permit rapid transfer of the part from the furnace to the quenching medium. A delay of more than a few seconds will, in many instances, prove detrimental to the effectiveness of the heat treatment. When material of thin section is being heat treated, guard sheets should be employed to retard the loss of heat during transfer to the quench tank. A rinse tank must be provided to remove all salt from the material after quenching if the salt has not been adequately removed in the quenching task.